Hi, I'm Mike Kelly from Project Healing Waters Omaha, and tonight we have a special presentation. Al Beatty will tie the Grey Wulff, and then he'll show you an easier version. Al and Gretchen have really mastered hair wing flies, and they're great teachers and presenters, so there's no more valuable presentation to watch if you want to learn how to tie these high-floating flies. First, I want to say happy Veterans Day to everybody, and happy Marine Corps birthday to Paul and any other Marines out there. And then Al, I'll replace the spotlight to you.
Yeah, this is
all yours.
Okay, well, my thanks to all of you there at Project Healing Waters. A special thank you to our brother in arms on the other end of the world in Port Macquarie, Australia, Paul Fidelis. One of these patterns tonight is developed with you in mind. However, our good friends in Nebraska have some of the similar problems that you have.
No, I don't.
In
I think
accessing. Okay, and I think I'm still coming through. If you need to talk, Mike, you'll need to unmute yourself. Okay, well, anyway, all right, good to go. And we're starting tonight with, like he said, it is a Grey Wulff, and I'm going to tie the standard version with a slight variation. And then I'm going to go into a version that you can tie with make-do products, none of which you'll find readily available in most fly shops. However, I recommend you go to your fly shops, but if you don't have one handy, like some of the people in the world are, like Australia, Nebraska, unlike it is here in Idaho or Montana. Have you ever been to West Yellowstone, Montana, just as an aside? You drive into town, there's 3 gas stations and 15 fly shops. However, I'm joking, it's not quite 15, but there's a few fly shops anyway. That's what I'm trying to say. But anyway, let's get to the recipe for tonight's fly. I want you to notice as you look down through the recipe, you see question marks. We'll talk about that more as the evening develops. The Grey Wulff, the Tuff version, the easy version. Either one of them is going to take a dry fly hook in whatever size you want to tie it in. The thread can be, again, whatever color you want. If it's going to be a Grey Wulff, though, it's probably a good idea to do it in gray. But you can do the Wulff in any particular color you want to match any insect that you hope to do. So I'm saying gray 70 denier thread or your choice of color. The tail can be elk, deer, moose, or whatever. And it's the whatever we're going to get to on the alternate easy fly. The wings, deer or elk, or whatever again for the easy fly. On the body is going to be gray dubbing or yarn. And again, whatever you want to make it.
Hey, Al, can I interrupt you for one real quick second? I need permission to do a record.
Okay. Let's see.
I didn't think I did, but apparently I do. There you go. I just sent you a request.
Well, there you go.
Thank you, sir.
And it looks like it's recording here on my end.
Okay, good.
Good.
Okay.
All right. The rib is optional. I'm going to tie it with a rib on one and without a rib on the other. The regular Grey Wulff usually doesn't have it. And as you can see, whatever hackle you have handy will work just fine. The head will be thread. The way I'd like to handle questions tonight is, hey, if you have a question, chime in and we'll chat as we go along. If the questions show up and slow us down in tying, that's fine. I know how to adjust the timing of the presentation so that we get done in the hour that we're allotted. Anyway, before we get going any further, let's go to the fly. Now, this is the version we're going to apply tonight, and I'm going to use moose for the tail rather than deer hair. Typically, it's constructed with deer, but I'm using moose. Why? Well, because I want you to understand you don't have to follow patterns. You need to tie flies and use what you got. Well, as it is, I've got lots of deer and I got lots of moose, but the moose box happens to be closer than the deer box, so I grabbed it first and got that out. Let's take a look at the materials we're going to use. For both, the materials has to go, you go to the materials, dear. There we go. And as you can see, I have quite a stack of materials. And before I go any further, I want to get some of this stuff out of my way. Starting off, I'm going to talk about using yarn for the body on the Easy Fly. This is Red Heart yarn from Walmart. I think it runs about $1.50 a skein, and a skein is enough for a whole fly club to tie flies on for the rest of the century. Anyway, there's a lot there for the amount, and as you'll see, it makes a really good fly body. I'll set that aside and get it out of my way. I don't need all this stuff sitting around me. Okay, I've got static guard. I'm going to go ahead and use that right now. You really need that in this part of the world. In the desert country of the Rocky Mountain West, the dry cold really creates static electricity. And I see I got a problem in those materials that I set out for myself, in that I didn't set out what I planned on for the dubbing. So let me grab some dubbing out of my drawer here. There it is. Soft touch dubbing. Good. I got my dubbing wax. I'll just set that aside. I'll be using that for a moment. Soft touch dubbing, I'll put that over at the fly tying station. I've got a few other things here. Hooks, will push that aside. Set the thread over at the station. I'm using 6/0 or 70 denier Danville gray. This is a couple of makeup brushes. We'll use those on the second fly. We'll get to that in just a minute. Set that aside. But for right now, I'm working my way down to the bottom of the stack, which is deer hair here and moose hair. And I'm using some good quality deer hair for my wings. And one of the things you want to look for in quality deer hair is a representative in this picture of a deer hide. Any of you that have seen our presentations in years past, we often refer to this. And just so you know, they're really good wing and tail materials for hair wing dry flies. That's humpies, Wulffs, etc. Comes in a strip down the backbone that's about 6 inches on either side of the backbone, down over the shoulder, down over the rump. And as you work down into the belly, that's more spinning hair. And you can see by percentage-wise that there probably is a lot more spinning hair available than there is dry fly wing material. But anyway, what you're looking for is that dark stuff. And that's what I have right here in this piece. All right, as you can see, we've got it's fairly dark right out on the tips, and it stays dark until it gets to that last little band or that last 10% of the hair fiber right along here. And moose is one of those fly tire friendly hairs. You notice that it's all dark. It all tends to not flare very much. Dark doesn't flare. I don't know what it is about it, but that's just the way it is. Anyway, so we're going to get started, and let's get back over here to the vise. And I'll get my glasses on here, and we'll take the roadmap fly out and just set it aside. Get a hook out. And one of the things I wanted to share with you, you notice this rubber O-ring that I have on my bobbin, and that I have my thread captured in that. I cannot tell you, as a traveling demonstration tire, how many times I would arrive at a show after traveling on a plane or in a car. I don't know what it is about the rattling and the moving around of a tying kit, but everything would be unthreaded, and I'd have to thread everything back through the bobbin. Well, now, when it's underneath that O-ring, it never happens, and all you got to do is pull the O-ring off, slip it back over, and you're good to go for the next place, wherever that might be. Anyway, back to tying flies. We're going to start 1/3 back from the hook eye, 2 turns of thread, cross over, and that's kind of anchoring my thread in place. Now, I want you to notice that I'm keeping tension with my left hand on the waist end of the thread. And of course, there's tension from the bobbin with the right hand. So as the two tensions work together, it lays that thread in place right tight against the previous turn. And I want you to notice also that I'm kind of wrapping at an angle as I get back there. So often I've seen fly tires do this routine. And there are times when you have to do it, but if you just raise your elbow and wrap at an angle, you can accomplish the same thing and not have to fight your way around that hook point. Now I'm coming back about 1/2 way in what I call the body area, and the body area is this area from 1/3 point back to the end of the shank. And so I'm halfway there. Now I'm going to slip over to the tie or to the materials area and get myself a bundle of this mousse. And the way I like to do is just take the scissor points and slip them under the hair, give it a cut, and then I'll just grab it by the tips and rapidly run my finger up and down through the butt ends. And what that does is removes the fuzz and the short fibers without creating static electricity, because when you go up and down, it's reversing polarity rather than stroke, stroke, stroke like so many people do. And that increases static electricity because it's lining up all the little electrons. And I'm sure some of you scientific folks out there can explain it better than that. But on the way back to the vise, I'm going to stop at my trash bin and just get rid of all that trash over the trash bin so I don't have to see that. Okay, now back at the vise, you can see now that I've got all the waste cleaned out of there and the shorter fibers too. Only want the longest fibers. And I'm going to take my hair stacker, slip the hair in it. Even the tips up with the stacker. Notice that I tilted the stacker with the tips pointing to the left. Well, why is that? Because the hair is going to go on the hook in that direction.
Mr. Beatty, can we see your hair stacker? And did you make that?
Yeah, I got 24 of those that I made, and let me tie this on real quick so I can play with the stacker a little bit more without trying to hold on to this bundle of hair.
Where have I heard that question before?
Yeah, I'll put that in place, and I want you to notice that I put it in place and tied it there with really tight wraps. And I want you to notice that even a hair that doesn't flare very much, when you really put tight wraps on it, it puffs up here and it puffs up here. Well, that's because I put really strong, tight anchor wraps right at the tie-in point. Now, as I wrap towards the hook bend, I'm going to put in snug wraps, not loose, just snug wraps so they control that hair flare so that we have a slenderer profile on our tail. And the anchor wraps here in the center really hold the hair in place. So it's the two different kinds of thread wraps working together. Let me trim this off, and I'll run my thread all the way forward to the front here. And now we'll talk about the hair stacker. Hair stacker is made out of a chapstick tube, and the cap of the chapstick tube is put inside of a 1/2-inch copper nipple inside of a low base trap load 12-gauge shell. And I don't know, I had these for, oh God, 40 years, 50 years, I don't know, since the late 70s. Yeah, so that would be in about the 45-year range, give or take. And I've got 24 of them. And when I'm doing an order of hair wing flies, I'll pre-stack a dozen tails and a dozen wings and then go to work. So that's all it is to it. It's pretty simple. One of the things when you make it, there's a little ridge on your chapstick right along here, and you'll want to take an emery board or something like that and smooth that off, because otherwise it gets bothersome hanging up on your as you're trying to get stacked materials out. Okay, back at the materials area, I'm going to get some deer hair. Let me set this aside, and I want you to notice that if you look real close at this deer hair right here, there's a slight curve to it. That's not uncommon in the hair that you get, and sometimes that does not make for the best wing or tail material. Well, I'll show you what to do with it. But first, I'll cut that off. And remember, I'm going to grab it by the very, very tips and rapidly run my finger up and down again, but I'm going to do it all over the waistband. So out over the waistband on my way back to the vise. All right. Good. That looks like it came out pretty good. And back at the vise, you can see that, well, I got a couple of short ones there that didn't come out, but everything else looks pretty good. And what I want in a bundle of hair that's about, when compressed, it's about twice as big as the tail, because I'm going to have two little spikes sticking up called wings that'll be about the same dimension as the tail. And I'll just slide I want you to notice that I'm sliding the hair into the stacker backwards. I often see people try to put the hair into the stacker and you got to wiggle around trying to get all the fibers to line up. You don't need to do that. If you'll back them into the stacker, you cut it even just a minute ago, so they should all just go in there just fine. And get rid of that. And I'll just stack that with a couple of taps. Oh, before I go on, did I answer your question about the hair stacker? I just assumed it went on about my business. Do you need anything more on that?
No, that is, I wanted to say, John, I think next Thursday, that should be our priority making before we do anything else.
Al, I don't know if I actually asked this question before or just thought of asking it, but shotgun shells come in a box at 25. What happened to the other one?
Well, the police are still looking for somebody that did something bad stuff with another shell. I can't figure it out.
We could pretend that he made one for me.
Right.
But you never did.
No, I didn't. These were made long before you and I even knew each other. Anyway, so I'm going to measure the wing for length. And one of the things that I really have trouble with is if I try to just tie this on the hook, I want you to notice what thread torque is going to do to my wing. It's going to make that thing curl around and go everywhere but where I want it on top of the hook. Now, there's a number of ways to force that hair to stay on top. And I'm going to show you two. First one is the loop method. Notice that I put a loop around the bundle of hair. Now I'll just slide that hair down to the hook and I'll lash it in place. And that's a really good way to anchor them in place. But there's another way, and you can decide which one works better for you. I particularly like on the doing the hair wings like this to measure it for length, set it on top of the hook and then twist down like I'm doing right now. See how that's a kind of at an angle? Well, I'm exaggerating the angle. I'm going to bring it up just a slight amount. Take a loose turn around the hook, and I'm going to let that natural tendency to roll my material right up on top of the hook. Now, you remember where I cut off the waist from the tail? And man, I got a spot right here to fill in. And I often see this happen with people tying hair wing flies. They'll say, okay, well, I'll cut that off. And they'll reach in and cut like this. And what you end up with is a cut that's too close to a 90-degree cut. And it just doesn't blend in. And it makes a big old lump in your body. And there's a way to fix that so you don't have to have a lump in your body. You'll have a nice, smooth body. Wrap back a little bit further. And now I'm going to bring my scissors in from the off side of the vise. Lay them flat along the hook shank. Now, I can make a cut. If I want it to be 90 degrees, I can pull straight up. If I want it to be at a severe angle, I can pull back. And I'm going to pull back so that I'm cutting at a severe angle. Now, let's see how that blends into the tail. And you'll see that they blend together pretty well. And we're going to, a smooth underbody normally will indicate you're going to end up with a smooth outer body. If you have a bumpy underbody, well, it's not impossible to get a good outer body, but it's not as easy. And I got a problem here. I'm going to back up and right back to this point back here again. That's my pull point, because I want to show you something that's happening to me. You look real close, and I've got some hair trying to cross under the hook. And it's a real pain in the neck kind of a thing. So what I'm going to do is come from my pull point right here, back a ways from the wing, and come between the wing bundle and the hook shank and go back to that same spot. Now that pull point, I want you to notice now, keeps that hair right up on top of the hook rather than ending up with one wing off on the side because everything rolled over on you. Okay, now we're going to stand this up so that it'll stay standing forever. And you don't do that by just pulling everything back and wrapping a big thread bundle in front. What you do is you're going to end up with a thread bundle in front, but you're going to first work your way there in steps. I'm going to take about a third of this bundle of wing and take and just run thread through it. And another third. And then the last third will be stood up by the thread dam that I wrap in front. And that thread dam is tied up against those fibers and it tapers towards the hook eye, which is in the process of building my hackle platform to be covered in one of the next steps coming up next. But first off, we want to divide our wings. Now, Gretchen's going to help me with this, so I don't have to look up at the screen. But one of the things that's really cool about Zoom is you get a really close look at stuff. In fact, if you want a really close look, we can give you one. I mean, come on.
Maybe a couple fibers on the right go to the left,
Yeah, I think you're right. I'll just pull a couple of fibers over and
not too many.
did I do too many?
No, I think that's okay.
Looks pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, then so I'm going to take and do a crisscross between, that's too much in the left. There we go. Now I'm going to do a crisscross between those wings so that they're kind of separated. And now I'm just going to take that near side wing and kind of push it forward, get it out of my way, and I'm going to wrap some soft, not soft, some gentle thread wraps around the base of the wing to gather those fibers together, and then I'll set them in place with an anchor around the hook shank. Kind of like doing a tent rope. Now I'm going to go around the near side wing with some gentle wraps, gathering that wing together. And again, I'm going to pull the tent rope to the ground and anchor it in place. And what I end up with is a set of wings that look like that. All right, now I am going to get ready and put some dubbing on, and I'm going to put dubbing on this particular fly in a non-traditional way. And that's because I'm going to put a rib on. The rib is going to be gray, and it won't really show up much until the fly gets wet, and then it'll have a segmented look to it. Now I'll just take my dubbing wax and stroke some on the thread. All right. Now I'm just going to, okay, I've got the wax thread, and I'm just going to pull things up so you can see. Okay, I got it out there so you can see that thread just grabs the dubbing. That sticky thread just grabs the dubbing. I got one here, it just grabs too much. I'll get to it later. And then I'm just going to allow that thread to grab the dubbing. I got too big of a bundle out here that came off the bundle of dubbing, so I'll pull that out and then I'll retouch a little bit more in there. And okay, good. Now what I'm going to do is just twist in one direction. For me, it's a clockwise direction when I'm looking down from the hook shank. And you're saying, geez, Al, you're at the front of the hook. What are you doing? Well, that's because I'm going to do something a little different. Now let's get over to the materials area. And I've got a choice here. I've set out some brown hackle and some grizzly hackle. And quite frankly, my absolute favorite color hackle in the world is grizzly. So I'm going to just grab this grizzly one and
More than Cree?
oh well, that's not even a fair question, Gretchen. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and tie this on as I dub the body going from the front of the hook towards the back of the hook. Whoops, going the wrong direction here. I'm on the wrong fly. Okay. And I'm just going to start dubbing and tying the hook, the feather to the hook at the same time. I often see people think that they have to have bare thread to to tie down a material. Specifically, in this case, it's a feather. And hey, the thread's still there, whether you've got material on top of the thread or not. All right, we'll just continue wrapping until we get to the back. I got a spot that I missed right up here by the hackle. I'll just go back and get that. Okay, there, that looks better. And I need just a tiny bit more. I'll just pull a little chunk and put it on my thread, twist it into place. And one little bit more. Okay, there we go. And working my way right to the back until I get to the very back of the hook. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wrap forward to the hook eye, putting in my rib. This is a commercial tires trick that you can just really crank out flies fast by adding the rib this way. And of course, you notice that I have dubbing going to be under my hackle. I particularly like that, but the commercial orders that we turn out, we ask the customer what they want, and they usually tell us what it is they prefer, and then we accommodate their needs. But when I'm tying flies just for me, I like dubbing under my hackle. I just think it when it's wet, it shows a more natural profile. Now I've tied this off with 2 turns of thread, and I want you to. I'll show you how to mess the fly up from here on. We've got a pretty decent looking fly going here. Not perfect, but it's pretty decent. And so the way you mess it up is 2 turns of thread holding that, Al. That's not enough. I think I better put on some more. So turn number 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 16, 18, 20. Oh, that'll hold it. So then I cut off the feather and I said, oh, darn, I got to cover up that feather. So then I end up with covering the feather up, and I ended up with a good looking fly and a big lopsided head. Well, let's go back. There's 2 turns of thread holding that feather. I am going to show you another way to tie off your feather, and that is to dogleg it. We've got it anchored right now straight across. I am going to end up pushing it back like that and wrapping a thread dam and a thread head in front of that, bending it back so it actually has a 90-degree turn in the hackle stem itself. Makes it a lot stronger, and it also makes for a lot nicer looking head on your fly. You can see how that pushes that back. And let's turn this around here so you can get a look. And you can see that we have a good looking head there. Well, let me go ahead and get my whip finish tool. And we'll go ahead and whip finish this fly, making each turn in the whip finish closer to the hook eye, not further away. And if we have time later tonight, I can show you why we do that. But right now, I was so intent on showing you the right way to do it, I'll just get it done, which is 1 turn, starting at the back, working my way forward. And there's that. And when I trim off the feather, it doesn't have to be trimmed real close. First off, it's poking back there in the hackle. I just need to trim it semi-close. The fiber sticking up there, stroke everything around and about. And you can't see that stub there, can you? It's there. And that little stub makes it just that much harder to pull out. Now let's dress the wings so that they're the way we want them. Take another look all the way around here. Dress the hackle up there. And there we have a completed Grey Wulff, the Tuff version. Any questions?
Yeah, never cease to amaze me at how simple you make these things look.
Well, it's simple after you've had some practice, and make no bones about it. I would suspect that Gretchen and I between us have done 100,000 flies, over the years.
Yeah, beautiful fly. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Al, on the yarn, is that like poly yarn?
It's the yarn that I've got is gray. The poly yarn is gray, and the red heart is gray.
And is that nylon? It's not poly.
No, okay, this is nylon here. I'm sorry. Yeah, the red heart is. I didn't show you the other one yet. It's super skeins of Coates and Clark made in Turkey. I don't think we care about that.
There we go. Go here.
Maybe you can find it.
Acrylic.
It's acrylic, which means it's some kind of synthetic. You figure out what the acrylic means, but it's made in Turkey. I mean, maybe that's good. Anyway, anything else?
Can I throw in a little bit of history? It'll just take a minute or two here.
Mike, you go right ahead. This is the Project Healing Waters presentation.
You know how I geek out on history. I just did some, I have a book, and I saw where the original was actually tied with bucktail. And the brown hair toward the tip of the bucktail is the hair that was used for the tail and the wings. Bob Jacklin, who I think you guys know, he's done this fly in a lot of shows, and I've seen a couple of YouTube videos where he's done it. And he talked a lot about Lee Wulff tying the fly, and he said that a lot of the time he tied flies without a vise. He held the hook in his hand and tied the fly, and he actually held the hook by the eye, which, if I was going to tie a fly without a vise, I think I would probably hold it by the bend, but he held it by the eye and tied it that way. The original one was a Grey Wulff, and he called it the Au Sable Gray. It was made so it could float high in the real fast Au Sable River. He had a Grey Wulff, but he called it the Au Sable Gray. There was a white one called the Coffin May, and then there was a bucktail Coachman, which was similar to the Royal Wulff. But Dan Bailey fished with him a lot, and they became pretty good friends, and he talked him into renaming his flies. So it was the Grey Wulff, the White Wulff, the Royal Wulff, and then there were several other ones, the blonde, brown, and Dan Bailey created a Black Wulff. Later he did an Au Sable Wulff, which was a rusty orange with a white wing, and then a Grizzly Wulff. But Gary LaFontaine, I guess, made a hare's ear dubbing for the body and called it the Werewolf. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's also a killer fly. Isn't that in one of our books, or it's one of our books or one of our videos? I can't remember which. It's in the book.
It's in the book. I'm pretty
LaFontaine's
sure,
Legacy, yeah. LaFontaine's Legacy book that we wrote is got the werewolf in it. Anyway, any other questions or comments?
It's in the first video that we did too.
That's true.
Number one video. I think it's the second fly in number one video.
Person with all the memory over here.
I've been working on that stuff.
Okay, well, if there are no questions, we're going to get to the Port Macquarie version of the Wulff. And well, we're going to be using some different things. And in fact,
Whoops. I thought you were going to the materials.
Well, I am, but I'm going to keep you messed up here. Keep the production crew here on my right, guessing all the time. Anyway, these are a couple of makeup brushes. You're going to be surprised at what a great tail they can do on your flies. So we're going to dive right into that, and I'll get over here to the materials area. Okay, what we're going to use for materials is, I haven't decided yet. I'll either use brown or black, whatever. It's whatever you have on hand. And this is some of the yarn that I caught off of that skein of red what was it, Red Heart? Yeah, Red Heart yarn. I'll set that over here at the tying area. And I don't need the dubbing, so I'll just put that package of dubbing away. And this is a chunk of poly yarn, and we're going to be using that on the fly. Set that over there. And I don't need any of the hair. I don't need any of that hair, so I'll just set that aside. I'm going to need some hackle, and I'm going to start out with a tail. Now I want you to notice that the brown fibers on this particular brush are longer than the black. I think on a size 12, the black will be long enough, and I would prefer black just because we had black moose on the other one. If it doesn't work out and they prove to be too short to do a good job, then what I'll do is I'll switch real quick and put some brown on. But anyway, let's get back over to device. And I'll get rid of our, we'll call that a roadmap fly. We want to make a fly with available materials that look as close to this as possible. So we'll set that aside. Get another hook out. And just like we did before, I'm going to start my thread base at the 3/4 point. And I'll pick up
3/4 or 1/3?
I'm sorry, Gretchen, you're right. I'm getting my patterns mixed up with another one that I was practicing this afternoon for tomorrow. Okay, 1/3 back from the hook eye.
There you go.
And I'll wrap to the bend of the hook. And I'm just going to pick up the pace a little bit because I chattered quite a bit on that first one. And we'll come back so that we're again in the middle of the body area. Wing comes up here, tail up here. Now let's get over to the, well, I'm going to hold this up right here. And I want you to see something that I can show right here up close. What beautiful tips those are. That is that's just pretty amazing for an inexpensive brush from the junk shop, you know. But anyway, I'm going to move over here to the materials area, and just like I did before, I'm just going to try to nurse it out just like I did some here. Only I don't have to clean any junk out of this one. I just need to cut it off down at the base. Throw that away. I missed some. I'll get my glasses in here. There we go. All right, now back over at the vise. And I think I've got a little bit too much, but that's okay. What I want you to see is that it's got even nice fine points on it, on tips on it, just like the hair that you get off of the moose. So I'm over here getting rid of some of those fibers, because one of the things about this that I found, where moose, elk, any of the regular hair fibers, they will compress a little bit. There's not a lot of compression in these. And so I'm going to measure them for length, set them in place. And I want you to, and I'm really just binding in here with really tight turns, because you know what? It doesn't flare. Now, doesn't that make a darn nice looking tail? I messed one up there. And let me get my tweezers out and get rid of that. Well, got it. Okay, makes a good looking tail, doesn't it? And that's a lot easier than messing around with a hair tail. Now, I left this long here on purpose because we're going to do something a little differently because of the wing that we're going to be using. I actually don't want the tail to end here. I want it to end up here in a very severe angle, almost at the hook eye. And so what I'm going to do is pull this forward and trim this off at a severe angle, like we did before, only the reverse of it, right up next to the hook eye. And what I want that to do is taper down towards the eye, because what I'm doing is building my hackle platform, because I'm going to put it on the wing a little different than we did before. See how that gives me an under base, if you will? And got one wild one there. I want to get rid of that. Okay. And it makes a nice gentle taper towards the hook eye. And that's going to help when we wrap our hackle. But so much for that for right now. Let me get up here about to the 1/3 point. That's where we want our wings to be. And I have this poly yarn, and I want you to show you something in poly yarn. I left one knot in a strand of poly yarn that I cut off because there's one of these little knot kind of things about every couple of 3 inches. And what you have to do is you take a bodkin and stroke it through here, working those knots out. It's the only negative about this stuff is that it's kind of a pain to get all those knots out. And I'll just work that knot out here the best I can. One of the things about poly yarn is it, like the tail material, does not have a lot of compression. So if I were to try that big old bundle on, I would have way more wing than I ever need. So what I'm going to do is I'm only going to take a small portion of it. About that much right there. In fact, that's too much. I'll get rid of some more of it. Now, what we're going to do is, I don't know if you've seen this maneuver before or not, but I am going to not tie this on top of the hook by cranking down on it. I'm just going to bring it around and pull it up and over. And now it's on the hook. And it's only held there by the weight of the bobbin. And so I want to pull it to the side just a little bit and do a crisscross. Now I can tighten up. And I'll do a couple of more crisscrosses so that I end up with that hooked onto or anchored to the shank, just like that right there. Now, what I want to do here at this point is gather that slightly so my wings stand up rather than lay flat. But if you're thinking a little bit about some of your fly tying, I just showed you a slick, easy way to tie mayfly spinner wings. So now we have wings that are nicely divided. And we want those wings to be about as long as the hook shank. Well, I've got another hook right here that I can use as a measurement device. And so I want that to be about that long. Okay. And I'll take that one and move it there. And that looks like our wings are pretty good. And so now we're down to going in another direction. And now we're going to use yarn for the body instead of dubbing. If you're one of these people that's not real good at putting dubbing on a hook, no problem. Here's some of that Red Heart, Red Heart yarn from Turkey, and it's acrylic. We know that just because we looked on the package. And I've split these apart so you can see the 4 strands that it's made up of. I only want 1 strand. Lay that aside. And I'm just going to go ahead and I should have moved forward right about to there. And I'm going to tie that on right there on top of the hook. And then wrap back to the end of my body area. And then I'm going to wrap forward to the front of the hook. All right. Now this stuff is all kinky. And if I just wrap that without doing anything to it, my body is going to end up less than even. But what I'm going to do is pull this around even, and now I'm going to stroke it a few times and then give it a twist in either clockwise or counterclockwise direction. And you can see those fibers line up. See that? Keep them just like that and start wrapping my body. And you can see also that this gray color is actually kind of a mix of black and gray. Kind of makes a really cool looking fly. And you're saying, oh, well, you forgot to put on the hackle. Well, that's okay. Don't worry. We're going to get there. All right. I'll set that aside. And now I've got my thread at the front. And I've got a few wild fibers here that I just may as well trim them off. I use some moisture on the wing to kind of get some of those wild fibers under control while I'm tying the fly. And I won't tell you where the moisture came from. You can figure it out for yourself. Some people, a little more couth than myself, claim that they're using a water moistened sponge. I'm not. And
I'm proud of it.
I'm damn proud of it, you betcha. Okay, and I've just got this piece of hackle that was left over from the last fly. I'll just use it. It'll be good enough. I'll strip the fibers here off one end. And I'll just tie this on right there. And I want you to notice that I'm bending the stem back as I wrap the thread back. And now I'm going to come back to meet my hackle. I'm going to show you a little bit about making a hackle bulletproof. You know, the one I put on the other fly, it wouldn't be impossible for a fish to tear that up and have it come unwound. Okay, so I'm going to now bring this in line with my thread. And I'm holding the thread in a pinch, and I'm letting my bobbin kind of flop around back here, keeping it under control with my hand, but I'm going to start to wrap towards the back, holding on to the thread and the hackle as I work my way back. Okay, now I'm back to the behind the wing, and now I have to untangle the hackle because I want you to see something. It isn't tied down, it's not going anywhere. That's because every turn of hackle has a turn of thread anchored around it. Now my tie-off point is actually right back there. And I'll just work my way through the hackle as I go forward until I get up to the front to finish off my fly.
You need to dress some of those back.
Hmm?
You need to dress some fibers back
Yeah.
before you cut your thread. Before you cut your thread. Look at the screen, Al. There you go.
All right, now I'll trim off the thread and make sure my wings are dressed into place. And now you've got an almost Grey Wulff right out of our book called Easy Trout Flies. And if you want to know what I used on the Yellowstone River as a working guide, it wasn't that darn hair wing thing that took so long to tie, because I cranked these out two, sometimes 2.5 to the time it would take me to do one of the others. Is it perfect? No. Is it great on the water? Yes. And any questions?
Does it perform the same? Can you tell any difference between the two?
Absolutely. It performs better because you tie the hair wing flies to go to the fly shop, and when you go to the river, the first couple of fish have been, the fly's been drug under, it gets pretty waterlogged and it goes to sinking. Okay, the stuff in this fly right here does not absorb water. Poly yarn does not absorb water, neither does a tail. One back cast is as dry as it was when it came out of your box. So that's what's good about it. And that's why it was in my personal fly boxes for guiding clients. You know, I'd always use the client's flies or the flies they got at the fly shop, but when push came to shove, we were using those polywing flies.
Pretty good indicator fly too.
They're incredible indicator flies. If you're one of these hopper dropper or dry fly dropper type of people, that's what you want, is a poly fly on top. Any other questions?
I was
Al, that-
wondering. Go ahead.
Al, that polywing, is that just basically the same stuff you buy at the fly shop, or where did you get that?
Polywing, if it's called poly yarn at the fly shop, it's the same stuff. Otherwise, you go on a place like Amazon or eBay, excuse me, not YouTube, eBay, and you type Fentex, and the name is spelled PHENTEX. Fentex, craft and slipper yarn. And that will get you to the craft area that sells this stuff that they think is made for making slippers and stuff like that, but it's really made for fly tying.
Hey, this is Bill. I did find with Fentex, the distributor in Amazon doesn't have very many colors anymore. So I found a place in Canada, because it's made in Canada, in Quebec, where they've actually got a very, very broad selection. So
yeah, and based on that comment, we chased a couple of colors we weren't having trouble getting here in the US down in the last couple of weeks and ordered it out of Canada.
Yeah, something mill is where I bought. I can't remember somebody's mill.
Hodges Mill or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, Bill. But
Bill, would you put that, if you've got it in hand, you put that in the chat for us, please? The address.
Yeah, let me look for it. If
Okay.
not, I can post it out later. But yeah, because remember, I'm going to be buying a bunch of colors. So just so everybody knows, like I'll be sharing.
Speaking of colors, do you ever do this in a lime color, like the lime Trude?
oh, absolutely. Oh,
Lime
yeah,
color? Yep.
you bet.
That
bet
is
we would-
definitely a Port McCrory fly, because that's exactly all the stuff that I use when I tie mine.
Paul, as
The
soon
only
as
thing I
I
don't do is I like the hackle and thread trick.
good.
That was
And by the way, you can do the same thing. You know, I started it at the front on purpose. I don't usually do that. I usually do it at the back and wrap it like a normal hackle. But when you wrap the hackle and grab it with the thread and wrap forward or back, it makes zero difference. It places the turn of thread around the stem as it anchors the feather down, and it just makes what we call bulletproof hackle.
I use some orange poly yarn too, which is easier to see sometimes in the water.
Excellent. I'll give you another tip too, and that I'm glad you brought that up, Paul. One of the things is I had my low light late afternoon flies in a separate box from all the others in my guide pack, if you will. They all had black wings, because if you want to know what really shows up on the water in that glaring low light in the late part of the day, black shows up like you can't believe it. Shows up better than any other color. It's so.
I
Remember
make some
when we
flies
put-
in
I'm sorry.
I'd make flies in the black also.
Yes.
We made some that we put primarily black, and then we had a little bit of white on the inside part of that wing. And that made a really good contrast.
It did. We called that fly we had a customer in South America, Argentina, in Arguena. I can't think of his first name now. Anyway, he says, I really need a Wulff that's gonna show up well low in the low light. And I said, I'll tell you a ghost wing Wulff. And a ghost wing Wulff is something you've not seen anywhere. It's just one of the ones that's out of my own brainstorm and out of my fly box. And it works well in those low light conditions. And what you do is a half white, half black wing, so that it's got a good background from one direction or the other.
And you kept the colors separate. You
Correct.
didn't intertwine them, so you want
Now, yeah,
definition of the colors.
yeah. So if you're looking at it from the front, you're looking at a black wing with a white background, and if you're looking at it from the back, you're looking at a white wing with a black background. I mean, I know that's an oversimplified version, but it really shows up well on the water.
And another
What
thing
did
to
you call
consider
that?
is Another thing to consider is in low light conditions, what a fish sees on the surface is silhouetted against the sky that's a little bit lit up by the moon and the stars or
Mhm.
whatever. And so a darker fly will show up a lot better to a fish than a lighter fly on the surface.
Absolutely.
And that kind of silvery look that the water gets just at dusk
Yeah.
to it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Lens Mill is the link. I posted it up there. On the chat section for
Okay,
for the
and
Fen.
take a look in the chat, and Bill has put that place up there. It's a hyperlink to the
Lens Mill. Yeah, that's where I got mine
Lens Mill.
too.
That's the stuff. Yeah, we just got a order of that in last week.
We've
Based on
been-
your recommendation, Bill.
We've been looking and looking for yellow, and they had yellow.
Yep, they had yellow, and yellow is just dang near impossible to find here in the U.S.
I couldn't find it anywhere. I spent a lot of time searching, and they were the only ones to come up with yellow. I still got to order it, but
We
I'll have
couldn't
some-
figure out why our yellow was selling out so fast. I mean, of all the colors we had, the yellow went poof. Well, for some reason, I don't know why you can't get it here, and it's kind of expensive to ship it in from Canada, but it's still less expensive than trying to.
Well, and you get so much.
Yeah, what the heck's
much-
a few bucks shipping when you get enough for 3 or 4 lifetimes of fly tying.
Yeah.
Here
How much
I
did it
am,
cost for
80 some years old, buying a new skein of poly yarn. Somebody is going to get to play with it. It won't be me. So
Yeah. How much did it cost for shipping? I'm just
No,
checking.
yeah.
it seems to me it's about $20 for
Oh.
several skeins of it.
Okay. I'm gonna get about 6 skeins, everybody, so different colors. So for those in Omaha that want some, I'll have some available. Along, as I've said before, with pheasant feathers, mallard feathers, and other feathers.
Yeah, orange, gray, yellow, white,
Mhm.
and then cream is a good one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hey, Al,
Brad?
Al, and then everybody that came in later, Josh, if you don't mind me.
Chartreuse for salt water also.
That's
I think
true.
we just lost Mike.
Josh Varner here. He's another kind of special guest. He's going to do a presentation for us after the first of the year sometime. We'll work out a date and what he's going to do. But this guy, he's actually in the military still. He's a first sergeant in Spec Ops. He is I consider a pretty good guru on deer hair. And he actually produces a lot of the some deer hair that's sold on that Kelly Gallup sells in his
Right.
flip shop. And Kelly Gallup is pretty serious about his materials and the quality of them. And if you see this stuff in the presentation he's going to give, this stuff is tanned so well, and it's beautiful hair. And he gives a pretty good presentation on what's good and what's bad, what's quality and what's not, and what primo really means, and all those kind of things. So I think it's going to be a really valuable presentation, and we'll work out the details on what he's going to do and some technical details, so he's all set up. But I just want to introduce you to Al and Gretchen, and
I'll echo that too, because I saw a couple of your YouTube presentations, and having worked with hair for the better part of 60 years, man, you're dead on.
No, it's really good. It's a great presentation. Love it. I'm gonna have to bounce. I've got another meeting to make.
Okay.
Hey, Sarge, could you answer me a question? You're not in a regular house there, because it looks to me like it's some kind of a tent behind you there.
you don't.
You're
Muted, unmute.
Sarge, you need to unmute.
Yeah, he's unmuted, but we're just not getting any.
Oh, there it is. It's
There we
unmuted
go.
now.
There you go.
Okay.
There we go. We got me.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm in my shop. I got about I don't know, about 150 deer hides on my floor, and I was just, while you were doing your presentation, I was oiling up some tails here. So yeah, phenomenal presentation. Like, even like you said, like with the wings and everything. Yeah, just phenomenal. Like that loop before you adhere it to the hook. It is just it makes things so much cleaner, and it's such a simple step that so many folks do not use, but it just makes your life so much easier when it comes time to the actual overall presentation or look of the fly. Yeah, phenomenal work. Like your
Thanks,
stuff
Josh.
is just, yeah, yep, excellent stuff.
Most everything you do in fly tying is easy if you know when to do it and where to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yep, yep.
Well,
Yep.
anything else, guys? Josh, by the way, Josh, I am really looking forward to your presentation.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, well, I'm gonna try to get it in here. Maybe before the new year. Like I said, me and Mike will iron out the details. But yeah, ooh, working full time and trying to get this up and going is it's taken a lot of time out of the schedule. So we'll see.
Yep.
Hopefully,
You're pretty close to retirement.
I'll send you the schedule of what we have coming up, in the next couple months, and we'll
Okay,
work something out.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And then the stuff that you were talking about, like that 6-inch center down the spine for like sorry, my dogs are freaking out because they lost the ball under my tumbler. So pardon the background noise, but that 6-inch section that you talk about down the spine for like the hair wings, it's spot on. Like, but there's some stuff that I have. If you're interested, I'll send you a couple of samples.
Manage it as a team, and when I say team, it is our national staff. It's all of
Somebody's
you.
talking over us.
It's volunteer leaders.
Anyway, Josh, if you want to send something or we want to send some stuff back and forth, email address is right there on the screen.
I can send you his email too.
Okay. Yeah.